"Be my dad on Father's Day. I've never met you," says a 6-year-old girl to a millionaire CEO, not knowing he was her real father. "Just before we start, drop a flag emoji that represents your country." The Manhattan sidewalk buzzed with Father's Day shoppers, their cheerful conversations and rustling gift bags creating a symphony of family celebration that Marcus Sterling had learned to ignore over the years. At 42, the tech mogul had built his empire on precision, control, and an iron wall around his heart that nobody had ever managed to breach. His Italian leather shoes clicked against the pavement with military precision as he headed toward his office building. Another Sunday consumed by mergers and acquisitions rather than family barbecues or greeting cards filled with childish scribbles. That's when he saw her. A small figure in a pink sundress stood outside the towering glass entrance of Sterling Tech, her tiny hands pressed against the cool surface like she was trying to push her way into another world entirely. Wild brown curls framed a face that made Marcus's breath catch in his throat and his step falter. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old, completely alone on the busy Manhattan street where danger lurked around every corner. "Excuse me, mister," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, as he approached with growing concern. "Are you someone's daddy?" Marcus stopped dead in his tracks, his usual rushed pace grinding to a complete halt. The innocent question hit him like a physical blow to the chest. What are you doing here all alone, sweetheart?" The little girl looked up at him with eyes that seemed far too old for her age, eyes that held a depth of longing and sadness that made his chest physically ache. "Mama says all the other kids at school have daddies who take them to the park and buy them ice cream and push them really high on swings. I don't have one of those, but maybe." She took a deep, shaky breath, as if gathering all her 6-year-old courage for what came next. "Maybe you could be my daddy today, just for Father's Day. I promise I'd be really, really good." Something twisted deep in Marcus's chest, a pain he'd spent 7 long years trying to bury beneath work and success. He knelt down to her level without thinking, his expensive Armani suit forgotten as his knees hit the rough sidewalk. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Emma Rose Mitchell," she said proudly, standing up straighter with obvious pride. "I'm 6 3/4 years old, and I'm gonna be 7 on September 22nd. That's in exactly 3 months and 4 days. The name hit him like a sledgehammer directly to the chest, stealing his breath completely. Mitchell, Sarah Mitchell. The woman he'd loved with every fiber of his being 7 years ago. The woman who disappeared from his life without explanation just when he'd been ready to propose, just when he'd thought they'd have forever together to build a family. "Emma," he said carefully, his voice rough with sudden emotion, "where's your mama right now?" "She's at work at the flower shop on 5th Avenue in Brooklyn. She works lots and lots of hours because we need money for our little apartment and for food and stuff." Emma's face scrunched up in concentration, clearly trying to remember everything accurately. "She gets really sad sometimes, especially when she sees other daddies with their kids at the playground. I thought maybe if I found a daddy for Father's Day, she'd smile again, like she used to in the old pictures." Marcus felt his carefully constructed world tilting dangerously on its axis. The timing, the name, those familiar brown eyes that matched his own perfectly. "Emma? What's your mama's full name?" "Sarah Elizabeth Mitchell. She's the prettiest mama in the whole wide world, but she cries at night when she thinks I'm sleeping. She looks at old pictures sometimes and says a name that sounds exactly like yours." The confirmation hit him like a tsunami of realization, regret, and desperate hope. The Sterling Tech Building's marble lobby felt completely different somehow as Marcus led Emma inside, her small hand trustingly placed in his much larger one. His employees' curious stares and whispered conversations didn't matter anymore. All that mattered was the incredible, life-changing possibility that this beautiful little girl, with her wild curls and innocent smile, might actually be his daughter. Wow, Emma breathed, her eyes growing impossibly wide with wonder as she took in the soaring 30-foot ceilings, polished marble floors, and gleaming gold elevators. You must be really important to work in a castle like this, mister. Are you like a king or something? Something like that, Marcus said, his voice rough with barely controlled emotion. Emma, I need to ask you something very important, and I need you to think really hard about the answer. Has your mama ever mentioned a man named Marcus? Emma's entire face lit up like Times Square at midnight, her excitement practically radiating from her small body. Marcus! Oh, yes, yes, yes! Sometimes when she's looking at old pictures in her bedroom late at night, she says that name and gets the really sad face, the one that makes me want to hug her extra tight and never let go. She has a picture of a man with dark hair just like yours hidden in her special jewelry box. She doesn't know I saw it when I was looking for Band-Aids, but I did. She studied his face with the intense concentration only children possessed. Are you that Marcus, the one who makes Mama cry happy sad tears? The confirmation hit him like a physical blow, directly to the chest, stealing his breath and making his knees weak. 7 years. 7 impossibly long years of wondering what had happened to Sarah, of throwing himself into 18-hour workdays and endless business deals, to forget the soul-crushing pain of losing the only woman he'd ever truly loved. And now, I might be, he said quietly, kneeling down to her level again with trembling hands. Emma, this is very important. When exactly is your birthday? September 22nd! I already told you that, silly goose. She giggled, a sound like silver bells mixed with pure joy. I'm going to be 7 really soon, and Mama promised we'd have a real party this year with a whole chocolate cake and maybe even some friends from school instead of just us two. Marcus's hands began to tremble violently as he did the math that would change everything. September 22nd. Exactly 9 months after their last night together, that passionate, love-filled night before Sarah had vanished without a trace or explanation. The night he'd planned to propose but had decided to wait until morning, wanting everything to be absolutely perfect for the woman who meant everything to him. Mr. Sterling? His assistant Jennifer approached cautiously, her usual unshakable confidence clearly shaken by the sight of her powerful boss kneeling on the floor with a small child. Is everything all right, sir? Should I call security? Jennifer, I need you to cancel every single meeting, conference call and appointment I have for the rest of the day. Everything, no exceptions. Marcus's voice was steady, but inside, his carefully constructed world was simultaneously crumbling and rebuilding itself from the ground up. And I need you to find an address for Sarah Elizabeth Mitchell. She works at a flower shop somewhere in Brooklyn. Use every resource we have. Emma tugged insistently on his expensive sleeve. So are you really truly going to be my daddy for Father's Day? For real, and not just pretend? Marcus looked down at her. At his daughter, he was now absolutely certain and felt something crack open in his chest. Something that had been frozen solid for 7 painful years. How about we start with today and see where this magical adventure takes us? The modest flower shop sat tucked between a used bookstore and a coffee shop in Brooklyn, its vibrant window displays brightening the humble working-class neighborhood like a rainbow after a devastating storm. Marcus's hands gripped the steering wheel of his silver Bentley so tightly his knuckles had turned white as he stared through the window at the achingly familiar figure moving gracefully between the flower arrangements with practiced ease. Sarah. Even after 7 years of painful separation, she still took his breath away completely. Her golden blonde hair was shorter now, pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she looked tired, older, with faint lines around her eyes that spoke of struggles and sleepless nights. But she was still beautiful enough to make his heart race like a teenager experiencing first love. still moving with the same gentle grace that had first caught his attention at a charity gala so many lifetimes ago. "There's my mama!" Emma bounced excitedly in her brand-new car seat, which Marcus had hastily purchased during their magical afternoon together at the most expensive children's store in Manhattan. "She's gonna be so surprised and happy to see me with a real daddy. This is gonna be the best Father's Day surprise ever." Surprised was the understatement of the century, Marcus thought grimly. He had spent the last 4 incredible hours with his daughter, buying her ice cream at Central Park, pushing her on swings until his arms ached, teaching her to throw a baseball, and listening to her endless, joyful chatter about everything from her favorite books to her dreams of having a complete family someday. Each moment had been a revelation, a glimpse into the beautiful life he'd unknowingly missed. And each laugh had healed a piece of his broken heart, while simultaneously breaking it all over again. "Emma, before we go inside, I need to tell you something very important," Marcus said, turning to face her in the back seat with trembling hands. "Your mama and we knew each other a long time ago, before you were born. We were very close to each other." Emma's eyes grew wide with pure excitement and wonder. "Really and truly? Were you best friends? Did you love each other like the prince and princess in all my favorite movies?" "We were incredibly special to each other, but sometimes grown-ups make terrible mistakes. And we lost touch with each other for reasons that seemed important then, but don't matter anymore." He struggled desperately to find words a 6-year-old could understand without revealing the painful truth. "Your mama might be very surprised to see me, and she might have lots of complicated feelings about it. But surprised in a good way, right? Like when you get the most amazing present you really, really wanted, but thought you'd never, ever get." Marcus wished with all his heart that he could be certain of that answer. "I hope so, sweetheart. I really, really hope so with everything inside me." They walked into the shop together, the tiny brass bell above the door chiming softly to announce their arrival. Sarah was arranging pristine white roses in a crystal vase, her back turned to them, completely absorbed in her delicate work. When she turned around at the sound of the bell, the vase slipped from her suddenly nerveless fingers, shattering on the floor in an explosion of glass, water, and scattered petals. "Hello, Sarah," Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying 7 years of regret, longing, and desperate love. Sarah's expressive face went through a dozen powerful emotions in as many seconds: shock, disbelief, fear, joy, anger, and something that might have been desperate, terrified hope. "Marcus, what are you doing here? How did you find me after all this time?" "Mama, this is my daddy for Father's Day," Emma announced proudly, running to Sarah and wrapping her small arms around her mother's legs with pure joy. "His name is Marcus. Just like the man in your secret pictures. Isn't that the most amazing, magical thing that ever happened?" Sarah's face went completely pale. Over Emma's head, her eyes met Marcus's, and he saw the truth written there in bold, unmistakable letters. The cramped back room of the flower shop was filled with the overwhelming, intoxicating scent of roses and baby's breath, creating an almost dreamlike atmosphere that made everything feel surreal and fragile. Emma sat cross-legged on a small wooden stool, carefully arranging leftover flower stems into a colorful bouquet with the intense concentration only children possessed, while Sarah and Marcus faced each other across 7 years of silence, hurt, and questions that had haunted them both. "She's mine, isn't she?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer with absolute, unshakable certainty. Everything about Emma screamed his genetics: her expressive brown eyes, her stubborn chin, her infectious laugh, even the way she tilted her head when she was thinking hard about something important. Sarah's hands shook violently as she nodded, tears streaming down her face in rivers of pain and relief. "I tried to tell you, Marcus. I called your office so many times I lost count, but your assistant kept saying you were in meetings or traveling for business. And then her voice broke completely, shattered by the weight of 7 years of secrets. Then I saw that horrible newspaper article about your engagement to Victoria Hamilton. What engagement? Marcus's voice was sharp with confusion and growing fury. Sarah, I swear to you on Emma's life, I was never engaged to Victoria Hamilton. We attended exactly 3 charity events together for business networking purposes, nothing more than that. The photo in the New York Times Society section. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper, broken and small. It showed you down on one knee with a massive diamond ring, proposing to her at some fancy French restaurant. The caption said, "Tech mogul Marcus Sterling proposes to socialite Victoria Hamilton in romantic evening." I thought you'd moved on completely, that you'd found someone who actually belonged in your sophisticated world. Marcus felt physically sick, bile rising in his throat. Victoria staged that entire photo opportunity for publicity without my knowledge or consent. She hired photographers, bought a fake ring, everything. I found out about it the next day and was absolutely furious. I had my lawyers issue immediate retractions and threatened to sue her for fraud, but apparently the damage was already done. The color drained completely from Sarah's face as the devastating truth sank in. Oh God. Oh my God, Marcus, I'm so sorry. I was scared and pregnant and completely alone, and when I saw that picture, I thought my heart would actually stop beating. I thought you'd found someone better, someone who could give you the perfect life you deserved. Mama, why are you crying so much? Emma looked up from her impromptu flower arrangement, genuine concern written across her small, innocent features. Did someone hurt your feelings really bad? These are happy tears, my sweet baby girl, Sarah said, hastily wiping her eyes with trembling hands. Sometimes grown-ups cry when they're really happy too, just like when you cry at the end of those happy movies we watch together. Marcus knelt down beside Emma, his expensive suit completely forgotten as he met her at eye level with infinite tenderness. Emma, your mama and I have a lot of very important things to talk about and figure out. But I want you to know something that's more important than anything else in the whole world. I'm not just your daddy for Father's Day. If you want me to be, if you'll have me, I'd like to be your daddy forever and ever and ever. Emma's face lit up like Christmas morning, and the 4th of July combined into one explosion of pure joy. Really and truly? You'd stay with us and not go away like the other daddies at school do sometimes? I'm not going anywhere ever again, Marcus promised solemnly, looking directly at Sarah as he spoke the words that would bind his heart forever. Not ever, ever again, no matter what happens. But even as he made the sacred promise, he could see the fear and doubt still clouding Sarah's beautiful eyes, 7 years of pain and self-protection not easily overcome. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood in the doorway of Emma's tiny bedroom, watching Sarah tuck their daughter into bed in the cramped Brooklyn apartment that had somehow become more precious to him than his Manhattan penthouse with its floor-to-ceiling windows and million-dollar view. The space was small and humble, filled with second-hand furniture and Emma's colorful drawings taped to every available wall. But it felt more like home than anywhere he'd ever lived in his 42 years. Tell me the story about the brave princess and the friendly dragon again, Mama, Emma pleaded, her bright eyes fighting valiantly against sleep despite the late hour. The one where they become best friends and save the whole kingdom together. Tomorrow night. My sweet precious girl, Sarah said gently, brushing a stubborn curl away from Emma's forehead with infinite tenderness. It's already way past your bedtime, and you have that big spelling test at school in the morning that we've been practicing for all week. But I want Daddy to hear all my favorite stories too, Emma's casual, Natural use of the word daddy still made Marcus's heart skip a beat every single time, filling him with wonder and gratitude. Please, Mama, just one tiny little story. I promise I'll go right to sleep after. Sarah glanced at Marcus, and he could see the complex internal struggle playing across her expressive face like a movie. These past 3 weeks had been a careful, delicate dance of boundaries and possibilities. Shared dinners around the small kitchen table, afternoon trips to the playground where Emma showed off her monkey bar skills. Emma's first Yankees game, where she'd cheered herself hoarse. Tentative conversations about the future that always ended in careful silence, but always with invisible walls between them, always with Sarah maintaining a careful emotional distance that both protected and tormented them. "How about I tell you both a different story tonight?" Marcus offered, settling into the second-hand chair beside Emma's bed that he'd come to think of as his own special place. About a man who thought he had everything money could buy, fancy cars and big buildings and important meetings, until he met a remarkable little girl who showed him what was really important in life. As he spoke, weaving an impromptu tale about fathers and daughters and the magic of second chances, Marcus watched Sarah's face gradually soften, the walls coming down brick by brick. But when Emma finally drifted off to sleep with a peaceful smile on her face, and they moved quietly to the living room, those protective barriers immediately went back up like steel doors slamming shut. "She's getting too attached to you," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper, filled with fear and desperation. "Marcus, this is exactly what I was terrified would happen from the very beginning." "Afraid of what exactly?" "That she might actually have a father who loves her more than his own life? Afraid that one day you'll wake up and remember who you really are and decide that this modest, ordinary life isn't what you actually want." Sarah's voice cracked with the weight of 7 years of fear and self-doubt. "You're Marcus Sterling, for God's sake. You have board meetings with Fortune 500 companies, charity galas at the Metropolitan Museum, a social circle full of influential people who don't include struggling single mothers and their kids from Brooklyn." Marcus reached desperately for her hands, but she pulled away as if his touch would burn her skin. "Sarah, I've completely restructured my entire life these past 3 weeks. I've moved critical meetings, hired additional assistants, turned down multi-million-dollar business opportunities. I've done everything I can possibly think of to show you that you and Emma are my #1 priority above everything else. For now," Sarah said with bitter resignation. "But what happens when the novelty wears off? When you realize that being a real father means getting up at 2 in the morning with a sick child who's throwing up everywhere, or missing critically important meetings for school plays where she has 2 lines, or choosing a weekend at the zoo over a business conference that could make you millions of dollars. Then I choose Emma every single time. I choose you both, every single time, without question or hesitation." Sarah's laugh was bitter and heartbreaking, full of pain that had been building for years. "You say that now with such conviction. But your mother already called me, Marcus. She somehow tracked down my unlisted phone number." Marcus felt his blood turn to ice in his veins. "What exactly did she say to you?" "She offered me money, more money than I could make in 10 years. Sarah's eyes filled with fresh tears of humiliation and anger. "She said I was ruining your life and your future, that Emma would never be truly accepted in your world anyway, and that the kindest thing I could do for everyone involved was to disappear again and take Emma somewhere far away." The rage that filled Marcus was unlike anything he'd ever experienced in his entire life, white-hot and consuming. Across her expressive face, these past 3 weeks had been a careful dance of boundaries and possibilities, shared dinners around the small kitchen table, afternoon trips to the playground, Emma's first Yankees game, tentative conversations about the future, but always with invisible walls. always with Sarah maintaining a careful emotional distance. "How about I tell you both a different story tonight?" Marcus offered, settling into the second-hand chair beside Emma's bed. "About a man who thought he had everything money could buy, until he met a remarkable little girl who showed him what was really important in life." As he spoke, weaving an impromptu tale about fathers and daughters and the magic of second chances, Marcus watched Sarah's face gradually soften. But when Emma finally drifted off to sleep and they moved quietly to the living room, those protective walls immediately went back up. "She's getting too attached to you," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Marcus, this is exactly what I was afraid would happen." "Afraid of what exactly?" "That she might actually have a father who loves her more than his own life. Afraid that one day you'll wake up and remember who you really are and decide that this isn't the life you actually want." Sarah's voice cracked with emotion. "You're Marcus Sterling, for God's sake. You have board meetings with Fortune 500 companies, charity galas at the Met, a social circle that doesn't include struggling single mothers and their kids from Brooklyn." Marcus reached for her hands, but she pulled away as if his touch burned. "Sarah, I've completely restructured my entire life these past 3 weeks. I've moved meetings, hired additional assistants, turned down business opportunities. I've done everything I can possibly think of to show you that you and Emma are my #1 priority." "For now," Sarah said bitterly, "but what happens when the novelty wears off? When you realize that being a real father means getting up at 2 in the morning with a sick child, or missing critically important meetings for school plays, or choosing a weekend at the zoo over a business conference that could make you millions? Then I choose Emma, I choose you, every single time without question." Sarah's laugh was bitter and heartbreaking. "You say that now, but your mother already called me, Marcus. She somehow tracked down my unlisted number." Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. "What did she say to you?" "She offered me money, a lot of money, enough to change Emma's life completely." Sarah's eyes filled with fresh tears. "She said I was ruining your life, that Emma would never be truly accepted in your world anyway, and that the kindest thing I could do was disappear again." The rage that filled Marcus was unlike anything he'd ever experienced in his life. The Sterling family estate loomed before them like an imposing fortress, its perfectly manicured lawns and intimidating colonial columns designed to make visitors feel small and unwelcome. Marcus felt Emma's small hand tighten in his as they approached the massive front door, her usual boundless confidence clearly shaken by the sheer magnitude of wealth on display. "It's bigger than my whole school and the playground combined," Emma whispered, her voice unusually small. "Remember what we talked about in the car," Marcus said, kneeling to her level on the marble steps. "You're a Sterling too now, which means this is your family too, whether they like it or not." Sarah hung back several steps. Elegant in the designer dress Marcus had insisted on buying her, but clearly uncomfortable in the formal setting. "Maybe this really isn't such a good idea, Marcus. Your parents said they wanted to meet Emma, not interrogate her mother." "We're a package deal," Marcus said firmly, standing and taking both their hands. "All 3 of us together, or none of us at all." The massive door swung open before they could knock, revealing Margaret Sterling in all her cold, calculated perfection. Her sharp eyes swept over Sarah with barely concealed disdain before landing on Emma with the expression of someone examining an unwelcome insect. "So," she said, her voice like Arctic wind, "you're the child who's been causing all this commotion." Emma stepped forward with the fearless innocence that only a 6-year-old could possess. "Hello, Grandma Margaret. I brought you flowers from Mama's shop because Daddy said you might like them." For just a moment, Margaret's carefully composed expression flickered with something that might have been surprise. Emma held out a small bouquet of cheerful daisies, her face bright with genuine hope and excitement. "How thoughtful," Margaret said, taking the flowers with obvious reluctance. The afternoon that followed was an elaborate minefield of subtle insults and pointed comments. Margaret's questions to Sarah were surgical strikes designed to highlight every difference between their worlds: education, social connections, family background, financial status. But Emma, completely oblivious to the undercurrents of adult warfare, charmed everyone present with her stories and infectious laughter. "She's not what I expected," Marcus's father, Robert, admitted quietly when they found themselves alone on the terrace. "The girl, I mean. She's quite remarkable." "She's absolutely amazing," Marcus agreed, "and Sarah raised her completely alone, with no help from anyone. Sarah deserves all the credit in the world for who Emma has become. Your mother is convinced the woman is nothing but a gold digger. Sarah was offered $1 million to disappear with Emma and never contact me again. She turned it down without hesitation. What does that tell you about her character?" Robert's eyebrows shot up in genuine surprise. $1 million? Margaret offered her that much, and she refused? She refused because she loves Emma more than money, and because despite everything that's happened, she still loves me. Then why does she look absolutely terrified? Marcus glanced through the window at Sarah, who was sitting ramrod straight while Margaret questioned her about her long-term intentions. "Because she's afraid I'll eventually choose this world over her and Emma. She's afraid I'll choose money and social status over love." "And will you?" It was the question that had haunted Marcus for weeks. But watching Emma patiently try to teach his stern father how to make a daisy chain, seeing Sarah's quiet dignity in the face of his mother's obvious hostility, Marcus knew his answer with absolute certainty. "I already have chosen," he said. "I choose them, every single time." But as they drove home that evening, Emma fast asleep in her car seat, Marcus could see the doubt and fear still clouding Sarah's eyes. The afternoon had shown her exactly what she'd be up against: a lifetime of judgment, of never quite belonging, of watching Emma navigate a world that might never fully accept her. "We don't have to do this," Sarah said quietly. "You could just be Emma's father, visit on weekends. She'd understand eventually." "Is that really what you want?" Sarah was quiet for so long, Marcus thought she wouldn't answer. Finally, she whispered, "I want what's best for Emma, and I'm not sure that's me anymore." The words hung between them like a death sentence, and Marcus realized that winning back his family was going to be the fight of his life. The confrontation with his mother happened the very next morning in the cold, imposing boardroom of Sterling Tech, where Margaret sat like a queen holding court, surrounded by leather chairs and floor-to-ceiling windows that looked down on the city below. Marcus had never felt such cold, calculated fury in his entire life as he faced the woman who had tried to destroy his chance at happiness. "How dare you?" he said, his voice deadly quiet as he closed the door behind him with deliberate precision. "How dare you try to bribe Sarah to disappear? How dare you threaten my daughter's future?" Margaret didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. Instead, she straightened her Chanel jacket and regarded him with the same cold calculation she'd used his entire life. "I was protecting you from making the biggest mistake of your life, Marcus. That woman is clearly after our money, and that child will never fit into our world, no matter how much you pretend otherwise. That child is your granddaughter." Marcus slammed his hand on the polished table, making his mother flinch for the first time in decades. "Emma is my blood, my daughter, and if you can't see how extraordinary she is, then you're blind." "She's illegitimate," Margaret said with ice-cold precision. "Born to a nobody from Brooklyn who trapped you with a pregnancy. Do you really think your business associates, your social circle, will accept this arrangement?" "I don't care what they think," Marcus said, meaning every word with fierce conviction. "I care about Emma. I care about Sarah." And I care about being the man I should have been 7 years ago. Margaret's laugh was bitter and cutting. You'll care when the board starts questioning your judgment. You'll care when your business deals fall through because people don't want to associate with scandal. You'll care when that woman inevitably shows her true colors and demands more money than you gave her predecessor. What predecessor? Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Victoria Hamilton wasn't the only woman I've had to discourage over the years. There was the artist from Soho, the teacher from that charity program, the journalist who thought she could write her way into our family. They all had their price, Marcus. They all took the money and disappeared when they realized they'd never truly belong. The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. His mother had been systematically destroying his relationships for years, paying off women he'd cared about, making them disappear from his life. Sarah hadn't been the first. She'd just been the one who'd mattered most. "You destroyed my life," he whispered, the full scope of her manipulation finally becoming clear. "All those years, I thought I was cursed in love, that something was wrong with me. It was you. You drove them all away. I protected you from gold diggers and social climbers," Margaret said, without a trace of remorse. "I ensured your focus remained on building the sterling legacy instead of being distracted by unsuitable women." Marcus stood up slowly, his decision crystallizing with absolute clarity. "Consider this your official notice. You're out. Out of the company, out of the board, out of my life. Your shares will be bought out at market value, and you'll never have any influence over Sterling Tech or my family again." Margaret's composed mask finally cracked, revealing genuine shock and fear. "You can't be serious. I'm your mother. I built this company with your father." "You're a stranger to me," Marcus said with finality that echoed in the empty room. "A stranger who tried to destroy the only things that matter. Security will escort you out within the hour." As he walked toward the door, Margaret's voice followed him, desperate and sharp. "She'll leave you again, Marcus, when the pressure gets too much. When the criticism becomes unbearable, she'll take that child and disappear just like before." Marcus paused at the door, his hand on the handle. "Then I'll prove her wrong. Every single day for the rest of my life, I'll prove that love is stronger than fear." But even as he spoke the words, he knew Margaret had planted a seed of doubt that would be harder to kill than any business rival. Sarah's greatest fear was that she'd never be enough for his world, and his mother had just confirmed that the battle would be brutal. The war for his family had officially begun, and Marcus knew he was fighting for everything that mattered. 2 months had passed since the confrontation with his mother, and Marcus thought they were finally building something beautiful together. Emma had started calling him Daddy without hesitation. Sarah had begun to let her walls down during their quiet evening talks, and for the first time in his adult life, Marcus understood what happiness actually felt like. That's when the first article appeared. "Mystery Mother and Child Rock Sterling Empire" blazed across the front page of the New York Society Times, complete with photos of Emma playing in the park and Sarah entering the flower shop. The article was vicious in its speculation, questioning Emma's parentage, suggesting Sarah was a con artist, and implying that Marcus's judgment was compromised by scandal. Sarah found the newspaper on the shop counter that morning, left there by a customer who'd looked at her with obvious disdain. When Marcus arrived that evening, she was sitting in the back room with tears streaming down her face, the paper crumpled in her trembling hands. "They're calling me a gold digger," she whispered, her voice broken with humiliation. "They're saying Emma might not even be yours, that I'm some kind of prostitute who trapped you with a fake pregnancy." Marcus felt rage consume him as he read the article. Every word was designed to wound, to humiliate, to drive Sarah away from him. "Sarah, these are lies, gossip rags trying to sell papers. Nobody who matters believes this garbage." "But they will," Sarah said, looking up at him with eyes full of pain and defeat. More articles will come, Marcus. Photos of Emma at school, stories about my past, investigations into every mistake I've ever made. Is this really what you want for your daughter? To grow up with people whispering behind her back, questioning her legitimacy? I want Emma to grow up knowing she's loved, Marcus said firmly, kneeling beside her chair. I want her to know that her father will fight the entire world to protect her. And what about when she's older, when she applies to private schools and they remember these articles, when she tries to make friends and their parents have read stories about her scandalous origins? Sarah's voice broke completely. I won't be the reason Emma is treated like an outcast. Marcus tried to pull her into his arms, but she stood up and backed away. Sarah, we can get through this. We'll sue the papers, hire the best lawyers, protect our privacy. With what? More headlines? More attention? Marcus, I can't live like this. I can't watch photographers follow Emma to school or have reporters calling her teachers, asking about her behavior. She wrapped her arms around herself like a shield. Maybe your mother was right. Maybe I don't belong in your world. My mother was wrong about everything, Marcus said desperately. Sarah, please, don't let them win. Don't let them drive us apart. But he could see the decision forming in her eyes, the same look she'd had 7 years ago when she'd thought he'd moved on with Victoria. I need time to think, she said quietly. I need to figure out what's best for Emma. What's best for Emma is having both her parents who love her, Marcus said, his voice cracking with emotion. Sarah looked at him with infinite sadness. What's best for Emma is not having her childhood destroyed by a media circus. As Marcus drove home that night, he realized that all his money and power meant nothing against the court of public opinion. The articles would keep coming, each one designed to wear down Sarah's resolve until she disappeared again. He had to find a way to fight back before he lost everything that mattered. But for the first time in his life, Marcus Sterling didn't know how to win a battle that wasn't fought with contracts and negotiations. The pressure was building, and he could feel his family slipping away, one headline at a time. The crisis came on a Tuesday morning that started like any other. Marcus was reviewing contracts in his office when Jennifer burst through the door, her usually composed demeanor shattered by panic and urgency. Mr. Sterling, you need to see this immediately, she said, her voice shaking as she thrust her tablet toward him. It's about Emma. The headline made his blood freeze. Sterling airs school drama. Teachers report behavioral issues. The article claimed that Emma had been acting out at school, getting into fights with classmates, and disrupting classes since the media attention began. It quoted an anonymous teacher saying the child seemed emotionally unstable and suggested that the chaotic home situation was affecting her development. Marcus was already reaching for his keys before he finished reading. Cancel everything. I'm going to Emma's school right now. He broke every speed limit getting to Brooklyn Elementary, his heart pounding with fear and fury. When he arrived, he found Sarah in the principal's office, her face pale and her hands shaking as she spoke with Mrs. Henderson, the stern-faced principal, who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Mr. Sterling, Mrs. Henderson said with obvious discomfort when he entered, I was just explaining to Ms. Mitchell that we're concerned about Emma's recent behavior. What exactly has she done? Marcus demanded, sitting beside Sarah and immediately taking her cold hand in his. Yesterday she got into a physical altercation with another student who was asking her about the newspaper articles. She pushed him down and told him her daddy was better than his daddy. Mrs. Henderson consulted her notes with professional detachment. She's also been having difficulty concentrating in class and has been asking her teacher repeatedly if photographers are going to come to school. Sarah made a small, broken sound. She's scared. Those reporters have been following us, taking pictures when I pick her up. Yesterday, one of them asked her directly if she was really Marcus's daughter. Marcus felt murderous rage wash over him. A reporter approached my 6-year-old daughter? "This is exactly what I was afraid of," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. "She's 6 years old, Marcus. She should be worried about spelling tests and playground games, not defending our relationship to strangers." Mrs. Henderson cleared her throat uncomfortably. "I'm afraid there's more. Some of the other parents have expressed concerns about the media attention affecting their own children. There's been talk of transferring students to other schools if the situation continues." "Are you asking us to leave?" Marcus's voice was dangerously quiet. "I'm suggesting that perhaps a private school with better security and privacy protocols might be more suitable for Emma's unique circumstances," Mrs. Henderson said carefully. Sarah stood up abruptly. "No, absolutely not. Emma loves this school. She has friends here, teachers who care about her. I won't let some gossip-hungry parents drive us away from the life we've built." "Sarah," Marcus said gently, "maybe we should consider..." "Consider what? Running away again? Hiding Emma away in some elite private school where she'll be even more isolated and different?" Sarah's voice was fierce with protective determination. "I spent 7 years teaching Emma that she's just as good as anyone else, that her worth isn't determined by money or status. I won't let you or anyone else make her feel ashamed of who she is." Marcus stared at her in amazement. This was the woman he'd fallen in love with, fierce, protective, unwilling to compromise when it came to Emma's well-being. "Then what do you want to do?" Sarah turned to Mrs. Henderson with steel in her voice. "We want Emma to stay exactly where she is. If other parents have a problem with media attention, they're welcome to transfer their children, but Emma Sterling Mitchell isn't going anywhere." "Sterling Mitchell?" Marcus caught the hyphenated name, his heart skipping a beat. Sarah looked at him with determination mixed with love. "She's both of ours, Marcus. She deserves both our names and all our protection." As they walked out of the school together, Marcus realized that Sarah wasn't running anymore. She was choosing to fight for Emma, for their family, for the right to exist in whatever world they wanted to create together. But the hardest battle was still ahead of them, and Marcus knew their enemies were just getting started. The attack came from the direction Marcus least expected. He was in his office late one Friday evening when his phone rang with a call that would change everything forever. "Marcus Sterling?" The voice was cold, professional, terrifying in its complete lack of emotion. "This is he. My name is Patricia Whitmore from Child Protective Services. We've received some concerning reports about your daughter Emma's living situation and would like to schedule an immediate home inspection." Marcus felt the world stop spinning. "What kind of reports?" "Anonymous tips suggesting that the child is being exposed to an unstable environment, inappropriate media attention, and potential emotional neglect due to the ongoing publicity surrounding your family. We take all reports of child welfare seriously, Mr. Sterling." The phone slipped from Marcus's nerveless fingers. Someone had called CPS on them. Someone was trying to take Emma away by claiming they were unfit parents. He called Sarah immediately, his hands shaking as he dialed her number. "Sarah, we have a problem. CPS is coming to inspect Emma's living situation." The silence on the other end was deafening. When Sarah finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "They're trying to take her away from us." "We won't let that happen," Marcus said with fierce determination. "We'll hire the best lawyers, prove that Emma is loved and safe, and—" "Marcus," Sarah interrupted, her voice breaking. "What if they're right? What if this chaos is hurting her? What if she'd be better off somewhere stable, somewhere quiet, away from all this madness?" "Don't you dare," Marcus said sharply. "Don't you dare let them make you doubt yourself. You're an incredible mother, Sarah. Emma is thriving because of you." "Is she? She's getting into fights at school. She's scared of photographers. She's asking me why people are saying mean things about our family." Sarah was crying now, her sobs breaking Marcus's heart. "Maybe I'm being selfish." Maybe I should let someone else raise her, someone who can give her a normal life. Someone like who? Marcus demanded. Foster parents who don't know her favorite bedtime story? Strangers who won't understand why she arranges her stuffed animals in order of height before bed? Sarah, Emma needs us, both of us. The social worker is coming tomorrow, Sarah whispered. What if they decide we're unfit? What if they take her away while we're fighting in court? Marcus, I can't lose her. I can't. Marcus was already grabbing his keys. I'm coming over. We're going to prepare for this together, and we're going to show them exactly what kind of parents we are. When he arrived at the apartment, he found Sarah frantically cleaning an already spotless space, while Emma played quietly in her room, somehow sensing the tension without understanding its source. Sarah, stop, Marcus said, taking the cleaning supplies from her hands. This isn't about whether the apartment is perfect. It's about whether Emma is loved, and anyone with eyes can see that she is. But what if it's not enough? Sarah asked, collapsing into his arms. What if loving her isn't enough to keep her safe from all this? Marcus held her tight, breathing in the scent of her hair and drawing strength from her warmth. Then we'll prove that love is everything. We'll show them that Emma is exactly where she belongs, with her parents who would move heaven and earth to protect her. But even as he spoke the words, Marcus felt a cold fear settling in his chest. CPS cases could drag on for months. Emma could be placed in temporary care while they fought to prove their fitness as parents. Someone had declared war on their family, and this time the stakes weren't just heartbreak. They were Emma herself. Marcus knew that tomorrow's inspection would determine whether they survived as a family or lost everything they'd fought so hard to build. The social worker arrived at exactly 9 a.m., a middle-aged woman named Carol Stevens, whose kind eyes immediately put Emma at ease. What she found during her 3-hour inspection was a small apartment overflowing with love, creativity, and the unmistakable signs of a happy childhood. Emma's bedroom walls were covered with her own artwork, photos of family adventures, and a reading corner stuffed with well-loved books. The kitchen held evidence of baking experiments and homework sessions. Most importantly, Emma herself was articulate, confident, and obviously adored by both parents. "Emma?" Carol asked gently while Sarah and Marcus watched nervously from the doorway. "Do you feel safe at home?" "Of course," Emma said with 6-year-old indignation. "Mama makes the best pancakes, and Daddy tells the funniest bedtime stories. They love me more than all the stars in the sky." "And how do you feel about the photographers and newspaper people?" Emma's face scrunched up thoughtfully. "They're annoying, like mosquitoes. But Daddy says they're just jealous because we have the most special family in the world." After Emma went to play, Carol sat down with Marcus and Sarah, her expression serious but not unkind. "I have to ask you both directly. Are you aware of the media attention surrounding your family?" "Very aware," Marcus said grimly. "We're doing everything we can to protect Emma from it." The reports suggested that Emma was being negatively affected by the publicity, but what I see is a well-adjusted child who feels secure in her parents' love. Carol made notes in her file. "However, I am concerned about the stress this situation is placing on your family unit." Sarah spoke up, her voice steady despite her fear. "Emma is our priority. We'll do whatever it takes to protect her, even if that means making difficult choices." Carol studied them both carefully. "Mr. Sterling, Ms. Mitchell, in my 20 years of doing this job, I've learned to recognize real love versus performance. What I see here is genuine family bond. Emma is not in danger from you. She's in danger from external pressures." Marcus felt relief flood through him, but Carol wasn't finished. "However, I'm recommending that you take immediate steps to address the media situation. Consider hiring security, establishing privacy protocols, perhaps even a temporary relocation until the attention dies down." She closed her file with finality. I'll be submitting a report that Emma is in a loving, stable home, but CPS will continue monitoring the situation. After Carol left, the three of them sat together on the couch, Emma between her parents, finally safe for the moment. "We did it." "You," Sarah whispered, tears of relief streaming down her face. "They can't take her away." "Not this time," Marcus agreed, but his mind was already working on the next challenge. Someone with serious resources was orchestrating this campaign against them. The anonymous tips, the perfectly timed articles, the coordinated pressure. This wasn't random gossip. This was warfare. "Daddy," Emma said, looking up at him with those expressive brown eyes, "are you and Mama going to get married?" The question came out of nowhere, innocent and devastating in its simplicity. Marcus looked at Sarah, seeing his own longing reflected in her eyes. "Would you like that, sweetheart?" Sarah asked carefully. "Yes, then we'd be a real family forever and ever, and nobody could say we don't belong together." Out of the mouths of babes. Emma had identified the solution with the clarity only children possessed. If they were married, if they were a legally recognized family unit, it would be much harder for anyone to tear them apart. Marcus turned to Sarah, his heart pounding. "Emma's right. We should be married." "Marcus," Sarah started, but he cut her off. "Not just for protection, not just for convenience, because I love you. Because I never stopped loving you, because losing you once nearly destroyed me. And I won't risk losing you again." Before Sarah could respond, Emma clapped her hands in delight. "Is Daddy proposing? This is the best day ever." Marcus realized he was about to propose to the love of his life in a Brooklyn apartment while under investigation by Child Protective Services. It wasn't the romantic moment he'd dreamed of. But somehow, it was perfect. "Sarah Elizabeth Mitchell," he said, taking her hands in his, "will you marry me?" 6 months later, Marcus stood at the altar of a small church in Brooklyn, watching Sarah walk down the aisle in a simple white dress that took his breath away. Emma preceded her as the flower girl, scattering rose petals with solemn concentration, wearing a pink dress that made her look like a fairy tale princess. The wedding was small and intimate. Just a few close friends, Robert Sterling, who had defied Margaret to attend, and the teachers from Emma's school, who had become like family. No media, no society guests, no one who didn't truly matter to their happiness. "You look beautiful," Marcus whispered as Sarah reached his side. "You clean up pretty well yourself," she whispered back, her eyes sparkling with joy and love. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. When the minister asked if anyone objected to the union, Emma stood up on her chair and announced loudly, "I object to anyone who doesn't think my mama and daddy should be married forever." The congregation dissolved into laughter, and even the minister smiled. During the vows, Marcus spoke directly from his heart. "Sarah, 7 years ago I lost you because I was too proud to fight for what mattered. I won't make that mistake again. I promise to choose you and Emma every single day, to protect our family with everything I have, and to love you both more than life itself." Sarah's vows brought tears to everyone's eyes. "Marcus, you gave me back the part of myself I thought I'd lost forever. You showed Emma what a father's love looks like. I promise to trust in your love, to believe in our future, and to never let fear win again." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Emma cheered so loudly that the entire church erupted in applause and laughter. The reception was held in the back garden of the flower shop, transformed with fairy lights and Sarah's beautiful arrangements. As Marcus and Sarah had their first dance to Emma's favorite song, their daughter insisted on joining them, creating a perfect circle of family love. "Did we win?" Emma asked as she swayed between her parents. "We won everything that matters," Marcus replied, looking at his wife and daughter with wonder. "We won each other." Later, As the evening wound down and Emma had fallen asleep in Marcus's arms, Sarah leaned against his shoulder. "Are you sure about this? About giving up your old life for our small, complicated world?" Marcus looked around at their friends, laughing in the garden. At Emma sleeping peacefully against his chest. At Sarah's radiant smile. "I didn't give up anything, Sarah. I gained everything." The media attention had eventually died down, replaced by newer scandals and fresher gossip. Margaret Sterling had been effectively exiled from their lives. Her attempts at manipulation powerless against their united front. Emma was thriving at her school, proud to tell everyone about her father who loved her and her mother who never gave up. They had built something beautiful from the ashes of pain and separation, a family bound not just by blood or legal documents, but by choice, by forgiveness, by the determination to love each other through any storm. As they drove home to their new house in Brooklyn, bigger than the apartment but still modest, still real, still theirs, Emma stirred in her car seat. "Daddy," she said sleepily. "Yes, sweetheart. Thank you for being my daddy on Father's Day. It was the best present ever." Marcus reached over to take Sarah's hand, his heart so full he thought it might burst. "Thank you for choosing me, Emma. It was the best gift I've ever received." And as they pulled into their driveway, Marcus knew that some stories don't end with fairy tale castles or vast fortunes. The best stories end with coming home to the people who love you exactly as you are, who choose you every day, and who prove that the greatest wealth in the world is a family built on love, trust, and the courage to fight for what matters most. Emma Sterling Mitchell had given him the greatest Father's Day gift imaginable. She had given him a family worth everything. The warm September morning air carried the scent of freshly baked cookies and birthday excitement as 11-year-old Emma Sterling Mitchell raced through the backyard of their Brooklyn home, her wild curls flying behind her as she directed the placement of decorations for her party. "Daddy, the banner is crooked," she called out, pointing to where Marcus was struggling with streamers while balancing on a ladder. "And Mama says you're banned from the kitchen because you tried to help with my cake again," Marcus laughed, adjusting the banner that read "Happy 11th Birthday, Emma," in bright rainbow letters. At 47, he had laugh lines around his eyes and a few grey hairs at his temples, but his smile was brighter than it had ever been. "Your mother has no faith in my baking abilities. That's because last year you accidentally used salt instead of sugar," Sarah called from the kitchen window, her voice filled with laughter and love. "Emma's birthday cake shouldn't taste like the ocean." The backyard was transformed into a birthday wonderland, but it wasn't the kind of extravagant party that Marcus's wealth could have easily provided. Instead, it was exactly what Emma had requested. Her friends from school, homemade decorations, games in the garden, and her grandmother Sarah's famous chocolate cake recipe that had become a family tradition. Sterling Tech had flourished under Marcus's leadership, but he had restructured his entire approach to work. He worked from home 3 days a week, never missed a school event, and had turned down countless business opportunities that would have required extensive travel. His priorities had been permanently reordered, and every business decision was filtered through a simple question: "What's best for my family?" "Tell me again about how you and Mama met," Emma said, settling beside her father on the porch swing while they waited for her friends to arrive. It was a story she'd heard hundreds of times, but she never tired of it. "Well," Marcus began with a theatrical sigh, "there was this incredibly brave little girl who walked up to a grumpy businessman on Father's Day and asked if he wanted to be her daddy." Emma giggled, even though she knew every word by heart. "I wasn't brave, I was desperate. Mama had been crying again because all my friends had daddies at the school picnic, and I didn't." "You were the bravest person I'd ever met," Marcus said seriously, brushing a curl from her face. "You took the biggest risk in the world. You trusted a stranger with your heart. Best risk ever, Emma declared with satisfaction, even if it did cause all that drama with Grandma Margaret. Margaret Sterling had never fully accepted Sarah and Emma, but she had learned to keep her opinions to herself after Marcus had made it clear that any criticism of his family would result in permanent estrangement. She sent expensive gifts on birthdays and holidays, but maintained a careful distance that suited everyone involved. Robert Sterling, however, had become the grandfather Emma had always dreamed of. He had moved closer to Brooklyn after the wedding and spent every Sunday with them, teaching Emma to play chess and helping Marcus learn how to braid her hair for school. "Daddy," Emma said thoughtfully, "do you ever miss your old life? The fancy parties and important meetings and all that rich people stuff?" Marcus considered the question seriously, as he always did when Emma asked about difficult topics. "You know what I miss most about my old life?" "What?" "Absolutely nothing," he said with a grin, "because my old life was just waiting for my real life to begin." Sarah appeared in the doorway, flower in her hair and a satisfied smile on her face. "Birthday cake is officially finished and hidden from curious fathers who might try to improve it." "I added cinnamon once," Marcus protested. "Once. And vanilla extract," Sarah reminded him. "And those chocolate chips that you thought needed more chocolate chips. Everything's better with more chocolate," Emma declared, jumping up to hug her mother. "Mama, you have flour everywhere." "Occupational hazard of being married to a man who insists on helping in the kitchen," Sarah laughed. But her eyes were soft with love as she looked at Marcus. The first guests began arriving, and soon the backyard was filled with the happy chaos of 11-year-olds playing games and eating too much sugar. Marcus watched from the porch as Emma laughed with her friends, completely at ease and confident in a way that still amazed him. She had grown into a remarkable young lady, intelligent, kind, fiercely loyal, and completely unimpressed by her father's wealth or status. She attended the same public school where she'd started as a 6-year-old, played soccer on the community team, and had friends from every background imaginable. "She's going to be okay," Sarah said softly, settling beside him on the swing as they watched their daughter organize an elaborate game of hide-and-seek. "Better than okay," Marcus agreed. "She's going to change the world." "Just like her father did," Sarah said, taking his hand. "I didn't change the world," Marcus protested. "I just learned what was already there." "You changed my world," Sarah said simply. "You changed Emma's world, and maybe that's the most important kind of change there is." As the afternoon wore on, and the party reached its crescendo with Emma blowing out 11 candles and making a wish she refused to share, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The threats and challenges hadn't ended with their wedding. There had been more media attention, business complications, family drama, and the normal struggles of blending two very different worlds. But they had faced everything together as a united front, proving again and again that love backed by determination could overcome any obstacle. Sterling Tech had actually become more successful under Marcus's family-focused leadership. His employees were happier, his business relationships were stronger, and his reputation had evolved from ruthless tech mogul to family man who builds companies with heart. The business world had learned that a leader who prioritized family wasn't weak. He was someone who understood what truly mattered. Sarah's flower shop had expanded into 3 locations, with Emma often helping with arrangements and learning the business from the ground up. She had a natural eye for color and design, but more importantly, she had inherited her mother's gift for making people feel special and cared for. "Daddy, Mama, come take pictures," Emma called from the center of the yard, surrounded by her friends and covered in frosting and grass stains. As they gathered for photos, Marcus marveled at how natural it all felt. This was his family, his world, his everything. The little girl who had approached him on a Manhattan sidewalk had given him the greatest gift imaginable. She had taught him how to love unconditionally. "One more thing," Emma announced, as her friends began to be picked up by their parents. "I want to tell everyone my wish. I thought birthday wishes were supposed to be secret." One of her friends protested. "This one's too good to keep secret," Emma grinned. "I wish that every kid who doesn't have a daddy or mama would find one who loves them as much as mine love me." Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. Even at 11, Emma understood that her greatest gift wasn't her family's wealth or status. It was the love they shared. That night, after the last guest had gone home and the decorations were cleaned up, the three of them curled up on the couch for their traditional post-birthday movie night. Emma fell asleep between her parents during the second movie, completely exhausted from the best birthday ever. "I love our life," Sarah whispered as Marcus carefully carried Emma to her room. "So do I," Marcus replied, tucking their daughter under her favorite comforter covered in stars. "So do I." As they stood in Emma's doorway, watching her sleep peacefully, Marcus remembered that first Father's Day when a brave little girl had asked him to be her daddy. She had given him everything: love, purpose, a family, a reason to be the man he'd always wanted to be, but never knew how to become. "Thank you," he whispered into the darkness. "For what?" Sarah asked softly. "For raising the most incredible daughter in the world, for giving me a second chance, for loving me enough to fight for us." "Thank you for being worth fighting for," Sarah replied, slipping her hand into his. And in that moment, standing in the doorway of their daughter's room in their modest Brooklyn home, Marcus Sterling knew without doubt that he was the richest man in the world. Not because of his bank account or his business empire, but because he had learned the most important lesson of all: that true wealth is measured in love, in family, in the courage to choose what matters most. Emma Sterling Mitchell had saved them all simply by being brave enough to ask a stranger to be her daddy on Father's Day. And in return, she had given them all the greatest gift imaginable: a family built on love, strengthened by adversity, and bound together by the unbreakable bonds of choice, commitment, and unconditional love. The little girl, who had once stood outside a glass building asking for a father, had grown up knowing without doubt that she was loved, cherished, and valued for exactly who she was. And that, Marcus thought as he turned off the light and closed her door, was the happiest ending of all.